welcome to the premiere of the GameShow Show. This is the Frostfather, Aaron Sanders, and as a local sportscaster and announcer to boot, I, like all of you, have hobbies and likes and dislikes. My preference, game shows, as you already can tell. But as you can see right before me, these are the items that we're going to talk about throughout the series. When you talk about paraphernalia of a certain show, you could either think of board games, you could think of DVDs, and you could think of pretty much anything else to the point of pens, pencils, and erasers. But in this series, we're going to cover some of the board games of either your favorite game shows or the game shows that you're going to learn about today. Now, when it comes to these board games, I have over 40 of them. Right there. And I went through hell and high water to get all of these. Now, a small percentage of those board games I have had since I was a kid, so I saw them when they were originally released. Now, a fraction of that also came from eBay, and I paid a pretty penny for that, believe you and me. And the rest of them, I went through secondhand stores, like Goodwill, Value Village, and so on and so forth. So I got them for either cheap, or it took a lot out of my wallet. But we'll see what board games I have in this installment. This is pretty much like a show and tell of the board games I have of some of those game shows, and what better way to kick off this series than talk about the brother and sister game show that's been around for decades. You've heard about it, I'm sure, and if you haven't, well, in the words of a famous figure, you're going to learn today. I'm talking, of course, about Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, a dynamic duo that's more powerful than ice cream and pie. And I like pie. This is a show and tell of the board games that I have, not all of them that are in existence, so you're going to get a brief sample of what I have in my collection. And let's start things off with the first one I have for Wheel of Fortune. We're going back to the mid to late 80s, the third and fourth edition from Pressman, Vanna White, Flick of the Wrist, Eat Your Heart Out. The contents were pretty much the same in any other edition from its time. You got the wheel, Flick of the Wrist again. You got the puzzle sheets, the puzzle board, which was very innovative at the time with its conceal and reveal gimmick. You got the free spin tokens, play money, because dollar bills, y'all. And then you, of course, got the letter frequency chart. There's only one R in this puzzle. And there it is. All of its glory, and it sold a lot of copies back then. Not bad for the 80s. Now over to the Junior Edition made by Pressman. The puzzle board had some cosmetic changes, like a rainbow border and a blue base. The wheel is now in $100 increments instead of $50 increments, make things easier. And everything is just pretty much the same. And of course, free spin tokens! Next up, the granddaddy of them all, the deluxe Wheel of Fortune board game from the mid-80s. And one interesting wrinkle, the authentic replica of the wheel. This was the cash cow right here. The contents were the same with, of course, the addition of the real wheel and then the removable wedges. Because dollar bills again. Then you got the 90s edition of the board game made by Tyco. Very different. And when I mean different, I mean holy pastel colors. So instead of conceal and reveal, we just flip the tiles down. The wheel, a little bit junky, but that's what you expect when you buy board games from secondhand stores. Instead of a dry erase, use letterboard, you have it right down in the puzzle board. And then next to that, you have the Travel Wheel of Fortune board game from Tyco. We just take this up. Well, isn't that great? So, after getting my frustrations out, I was able to set things up, and of course, it's very primitive considering that it's the travel edition, so you can't expect a lot of contents. As you can see, the puzzle board is basically paper, and you have to write down the letters that correspond to the numbers they give. The wheel, very crappy. If you want to find out if a letter is in the puzzle, you just pull down this door, and then you just write it down. The puzzle? American Bald Eagle. And for my friends at home, I like pie. And then in the late 2000s, Pressman did its magic again with the deluxe Wheel of Fortune board game, the 25th Silver Anniversary Edition. The wheel, as you can see right here, all glittery and silvery. It's so beautiful, and it spins around too. Only problem is, it doesn't have those slots to put your removable wedges in, and that is a crying shame. Darn you, Pressman. But nonetheless, as you could see, it's quite strange that they don't have the slots for it, because if you take a look at the back of the wheel, they still have slots for those wedges, so I'm assuming that they took the mold from the 80s edition of the deluxe board game. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So with the used letterboard and cash, free spin tokens and everything, nothing has changed except for the graphics, so it's pretty much the same. And to this day, Pressman still has the license for Wheel of Fortune board games, so I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. Now let's shift things over to Jeopardy, the question and answer game with a twist, where they give you the answers and you must supply the questions. Go back all the way to 1964, a different time, and you could pretty much get a full gallon of gas for pretty much about 50 cents. That might be a hyperbole, but you know what? It is what it is. One of Milton Bradley Cash Cow's franchises and one of the oldest board games in my collection, it's Jeopardy! 8th edition from 1972. Board games were primitive, but it really made the big bucks for MB. Take a look at the contents, the dollar bills, the question booklet containing all the correct responses in this edition. Now let's take a look at the first round board, ranging from $10 to $50, my goodness. You know what, I'm a sports broadcaster in the Rose City, so let's try sports for 20. The answer is, the Nets are the second New York team in this pro sport. What is basketball? Taking a look at the booklet, I am right, so give me my money. Let's zoom into the 80s, where Pressman got the Jeopardy franchise for board game adaptations, the first edition and junior edition, and the content's pretty similar, just like Wheel of Fortune when Pressman got it then. Question booklet, the clickers, which wasn't in my Milton Bradley edition. And when it comes to buying stuff from secondhand stores, you might get a little bit of some treasures or two. A family, I think, found us smart enough to add extra content from previous board games. I thought it was pretty smart, but to maintain the Jeopardy style, I say yeet! So these are some of the categories in the adult edition from Pressman, and now the categories from the junior edition. Remember, junior editions mean easier questions suited for the younger audience. And then in 1990, they released the 25th anniversary edition, and they had some questions ranging back from when the show premiered, 1965, even though it was 64. Their mistake. Okay, here we go. Let's do Beatlemania for 100. The answer is... The title of their 1965 film and top hit of the year. What is A Hard Day's Night? And the correct response is... What is Hell? Close enough. And Tycho had a turn with Jeopardy in 1992, and look, very different from board games past. The categories have their own sections. And there was a lot of categories too. All it takes is just pull the lever forward, read the answer, but my favorite board game in my collection is the one from 1999 made by Parker Brothers. And dare I say, it's one of the most faithful board game additions to the television show. And I'll give you why. There was a final Jeopardy clue for the board game. Never been seen before. And as you can see, I'm going to go for 200. Answer, daily double. Let's have a look at the clue. He played Tony on Taxi, Tony on Who's the Boss, and Tony on Hudson Street. Who is Tony Danza? And Tony Danza is right. And once again, pay me my money. That's 10 times more than what I won in the 72 version. My grade, thumbs up. Put her there. Then, in the early 2000s, Pressman got the Jeopardy license like they did for Wheel of Fortune and got a spin, a Simpsons twin. The Simpsons Jeopardy board game. And as you can see in this yellow motif, just like the Simpsons, who shot Mr. Burns for 400 he thought he shot his boss, but didn't. Who is Smithers? And add $400 to my score. Jeopardy, Simpsons. What an incredible match. And that's the story here in the first episode of the Game Show Show, reviewing the game shows from our past, from now, and most likely forever, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. And I'm telling you, you cannot separate those two. They're like high school sweethearts that's been there for decades. Once you take care of a perfect thing, it will last forever. And those are what those shows have proven to us after all these decades. So that's the glimpse of what I have to offer in this series, showing you the board game adaptations of the game shows that you know and love or just learning about for the first time. And plus, you got Google, the world's at your fingertips, so you can search it up. But me, I want to give an interesting spin on what those game shows were all about and what paraphernalia they just so happen to have during their popularity. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come along for the ride too, and you can see me on Facebook and YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at @ASandersWindsor too. So stay tuned, because we're going to have more game shows and board games to cover. Trust me. You seen the collection? I don't think we're done by a long shot. So until next time here on the Game Show Show, this be the Frostfather Aaron Sanders saying so long for now.